Hey everybody, welcome back to another fun and exciting pre-algebra class. Today we are going to be jumping into lesson 7.3 in your book. That is on page 301, page 301. And today we are going to be talking about slope. Again, on the Cartesian plane, talking about putting lines, points, things like that on the Cartesian plane. But what we'll be talking about today is called slope. So go ahead and look down here at the screen and you'll see where I have the word slope also in your book. You can look there on 301. Actually, page 300 is where it starts, so you can look there. Slope is the amount of incline or slant that a line has. So think about like a slide. Like when you were a little kid, you loved to go down the slide, and that slide had an incline. Okay, maybe you go skiing or sledding or something like that, and you go down the hill. Well, that hill has a slope. It has a slant, an incline. So the steeper that it is, the faster you go, like a roller coaster, right? So the more the slope goes down, the faster it goes down, the faster you go down, right? So that's slope. Now, when we're on the Cartesian plane, the slope of the line tells us a whole lot about the line that we're dealing with. So we need to understand what slope is, how it works, how we can find it, all that good stuff. So notice I have here, it says all lines on the Cartesian plane have some type of slope. Now, there's four different types of slope. So every line that you see is going to have one of every straight line. I'll put it that way. Every straight line that you see on the Cartesian plane, it will have some form of one of the next four types of slope. The first one is called positive slope. This is when the line rises from the left to the right. So if you think about this here, I'll kind of put a line on here. It goes from the bottom left to the upper right. That would be a positive slope. That pink line would be a positive slope. Number two, negative slope. This is when it goes from the right to the left. So now we're starting to the bottom right and we're going up to the left. That would be a negative slope. And we'll talk about what all this means here in just a minute and what it looks like and all that good stuff. But let's just get some of these definitions out of the way. Number three is the zero slope. A zero slope line is horizontal, or it just is straight. Okay, it's a straight line, horizontal. Doesn't go up or down. It only goes left and right, if you will. Okay, and then the next one, number four, is what's called undefined slope. Undefined slope is a vertical line. That's not a very good vertical line. I'll try to do just a little bit better. It's still not great, but it's a vertical line. It's straight up and down. Okay, straight up and down. This type of a line doesn't have any left and right to it. It only goes up and down. Okay, so those are the four different types of slope that you can have. So let's kind of just go over this. I'll put this here on a Cartesian plane and we'll just go over those real quick. Okay, so the first one was the pink line, and the pink line was positive slope. So anytime that you have a line going, and it doesn't matter how it goes, as long as it's going, it's rising to the right. So it starts here, okay, on the left, and it rises up here to the right. That is a positive slope. All right, the next one was a purple line, and the purple line is really kind of the same thing, only it goes the other way. I'll put it right here and notice that it starts down here, okay, on the bottom right, and then it slopes up to the left where it ends. Now, technically, it doesn't end and it doesn't start. You know, this line's going to keep going in both directions, but the point is that it goes from bottom right to upper left. So this is negative. So let me actually just write that in there. I'll just write this negative, neg. And then here on the positive, I'll write pos. Okay? So those are the negative and positive lines. Now, the other one was horizontal, and that was the blue line that I drew. So a horizontal line, it doesn't rise up or down. It just goes left and right. And it can be anywhere. I mean, it could be down here. It could be up here. It doesn't matter where it is. It could even be right here on this line. It doesn't matter where it is. So I'll put it right down here. and this is a horizontal line, or this is what's called zero slope. So I'm going to actually write this 0. All right. So that's a zero slope that doesn't have any slope whatsoever. Okay, then the last type of slope that we mentioned was the undefined. Undefined means, to be honest, you'll see why it goes undefined here in a second. I'm going to show you a little bit more about it. But to be honest, it doesn't, there's no definition because it's just like 100% slope. It's just straight down. In other words, it's like you're on the roller coaster and you're looking straight down and you're scared to death that you're going to fall, and crash on the ground. But isn't it nice that the roller coaster actually kind of takes you back up again? That'd be a bad ride if you crash to the ground. I've been on roller coasters where I felt like I was going to crash to the ground, but I never have. So I know that every once in a while there's problems with roller coasters, but for the most part, they bring you back up again. And that's kind of the fun of the ride, up and down and around and things like that. But this is a 100% drop. This is a straight line. So, you can just go like this and we'll put it right here. All right. So that is undefined. I'll write that UND, undefined. Now, notice something about the undefined. Remember, this is the y-axis, right? Notice that the y-axis itself is undefined. It is parallel, all right, with this other line over here. It is vertical. Since it's vertical, the y-axis itself is an undefined slope. On the other hand, if you come over here to this blue one, the blue one is parallel to the x-axis. This axis right here, we'll call this the x-axis. And so notice that the x-axis is zero slope because it is a horizontal line. So hopefully that kind of lets you picture those a little bit better as you go through. So remember, positive is kind of going like this. I'll just put some arrows. So it's going from the bottom left to the upper right. Negative is going the other way. It's going bottom right to upper left. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on here, and let's talk about just a little bit more in depth about like the mathematics behind slope. How are we going to find slope? How are we going to calculate slope? Slope is designated with the letter M in algebra. So if you see the letter M in an equation, or you just see the letter M somewhere in algebra, you need to think, oh, this is a slope problem. They're talking about slope. Now, that's not 100% of the time. I guess you could use the letter M for something else, but typically when you see the letter M, you should be thinking, okay, we're dealing with a slope problem. We're dealing with graphing. We're dealing with the Cartesian plane. So there's a couple different ways to think about slope algebraically, mathematically. The first one is to think about slope as rise over run. Okay, so this one right here, rise over run. What does that mean? Well, the rise is going up and down, right? And run is when you run left and right. So up and down, left and right. And that kind of goes over to this one over here. So another way to think about it is up and down. So, let's do this. Let's call this up, and let's call this, we'll call this up, down. Okay. And we'll call this one left, right. So what's going on with slope is it's like the up and down is the numerator of the fraction. Okay, and the left and right is the denominator of the fraction. So that brings us over here to this one. This is the y, right? What is the y? Okay, let's go back up here to this graph that we had. Notice that this is the y. The y is the up and down axis, right? So this is the up and down axis right here, and then the x is our left and right axis. Notice that it says that slope is always expressed as a fraction. And I say always in capital letters. And I said that for a couple different reasons. One, for emphasis, like, oh my, this is important. Okay, so like lock it into your brain. The second thing is to draw attention to it because I'm kind of telling you a little bit of a lie right there. Because every once in a while, slope, it'll say m equals 2. Remember when I said that m equals slope, right? So m equals 2. And you might say, Mr. Steve, that is not a fraction. And I would say, yes, it is. And you're like, oh, okay, you've lost your mind now. Well, Don't forget that every whole number is a fraction, right? So we would put 2 over 1. 2 equals 2 over 1. Now, when I write slope personally, I always write it with 1 as the denominator. I like to see it. Now, sometimes when the book writes it, they might just put 2. So if you see that, if you put m equals 2, okay, that's fine. I would always write it personally. I would always write it 2 over 1. Okay, m equals 2 over 1. Why? Because this tells me, this reinforces, okay, there's a slope, and the numerator is 2, so that's my y. So that would be y equals 2 over, notice, x equals 1, right? So my x, I do have an x. I don't have a 0. Now, it's really, really important, and I wrote this here real quick too. Remember that slope can be positive or negative, right? So you could have negative 2 over 1, and that would be fine too. You could have negative 3 over 2, okay? That would mean that the y equals negative 3 and that the x equals 2. That's all that means. Now, check this out. What happens when, let's kind of think about this. What happens when you don't have a denominator or it's a 0? So let's say it's 2 over 0. What is that? What happens with 2 over 0? Well, if I pull up my calculator and I say, okay, calculator, what is 2 divided by 0? What does that equal? The calculator says math error, right? That's a math error. So in other words, you can never divide something by 0. That is undefined, or that is a math error. In algebra, in the Cartesian plane graphing, we wouldn't write math error, okay? We would write that as an undefined slope. In other words, that is 100% slope. That's the line that goes straight down. If we go back up here to that, that's that green line, right? That green line that goes straight up and down, that's undefined. So when it's undefined, the denominator is 0. You can even write that if you want, undefined, and then you could write denominator equals 0. And I could write 0 so you could see that better. 0, there you go. So the denominator equals 0 in undefined. So there's also a trick here with the vertical slope, or with the 0 slope. What you have when you have 0 slope is you have something that looks like this. Let me leave that. So now you have 0 divided by 2. And this equals 0 slope. Why does that equal 0 slope? Pull your calculator back out, and now let's do 0 divided by 2. 0 divided by 2. And that equals 0. So our answer, our solution is 0. All right. So anything, whenever you try to divide 0 by anything, you can't divide 0, right? You always get 0. So anything divided by 0 is always undefined. But whenever you divide something, when 0 is the numerator, you always get 0. It always yields 0. So notice that this one, the 0 slope, would always have the numerator. So the numerator equals 0, right? So with 0 slope, the numerator equals 0. Or you could also say that y equals the numerator and y equals 0. Down here, you would have that x equals the denominator, so x equals 0. All right. So in the case of undefined slope, your x is going to equal 0. In the case of your 0 slope, then your numerator is, your y is going to equal 0. Well, there's a lot in this lesson. I'm not going to be able to finish it in this video, so I'm just going to go ahead and end it right there. And then in the next video, what we'll do is we'll work on finding slope, we'll work on using points, we'll work on graphing, and we'll just kind of practice. So this video, make sure that you remember all of those different terms that we learned. Make sure that you remember all those different ways to find slope and what slope is. And then in the next lesson, we'll practice. Okay, so that's all I got for you. We'll see you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.